Good morning again. It is good to be together, and I missed having Chris around. I'm not sure exactly why. He's got his reasons, but no, we're glad that they're back, and it's always good. Somebody asked me about church camp, and they said, "Do you know, what's it like to be at competing camps and have competing camps?" I said, "There is no such thing." Somebody said, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, I want children to go to church camp. I don't care which one they go to, go." I think that's very, very important. And as I tell my children, I think I told most of y'all last week, but the young people weren't here. I don't know who you were around at church camp. Don't have a clue. But you may have been sitting I've already scared him. You may be sitting next to or in the same area of the person you may end up marrying. That happened to me, and I am thankful for that. Church camp's always been a great place for me. Today we start the Why series. I've really been anxious about this. I've been looking forward to it for a long time. In fact, that was one of the things that I talked to the elders about whenever I came on board, is that one of the things I want to do is to establish for us some understanding as far as once we get to a point to where our elders are in place, we went through the elder process, why are the things the way they are? I want to see, if you don't mind, raising your hand if you were raised from the time you were born until now, you were raised as a member of the church. Okay. Now, put your hands down. All the rest of us, raise our hands. You realize it's about 60-40 split. Just guessing from what I see. I was talking to Ryan earlier, and he said, "Do you know that 90% of statistics by preachers are guesswork?" So a 60-40 split's just my guesstimation. I have no idea. But as we look at this, there's a lot of questions that we have and that we've had to answer over the years. And there's a lot of answers to those questions. And some of the things that we're going to look at this morning are very, very important to us. Why ask why? And that may be a question that you are dealing with this morning. Why do we need this? But there's the question in itself. Why? Why is this important? Well, there's the question in itself. Why? Why do we do the things that we do? Many of you may be here this morning for the very first time. I'm not sure. I hope that you are, and if you are, we want you to be comfortable with what we're doing. But you may be asking in your mind this morning, why did we do what we did this morning? There wasn't a lot of explanation. We've done that in the past, and I think it's good to do it on occasion. I think that we need to remind ourselves. But why ask why? Why is one of the most important questions that we can ever have. Why is extremely important when it comes to living the Christian life. The question of why is always one that seems to come at some of the most unopportune moments, though, isn't it? Go clean your room. Why? Because it's dirty. Why? Because you made it that way. Why? I don't know. Why? You know, we can have all those questions, and we go through that with our children, and they want to ask why. Dad, the TV's on. I know. Why? Dad, did you know that the yard needs to be mowed? That's when I go, why? No, I'm teasing. We go through why, and we want to know why. And why is a legitimate thing to ask that question. I mean, nobody usually wants to hear the answer to that question when it's asked for that simple reason. I mean, we as humans don't like to have to explain why things the way they are. And I've heard that statement before, haven't you? I hate explaining why. Without that answer, without the answer to that question, we have no reason to exist. Because one of the most important questions that we'll ever get the answer to is, Father, why did you do this? And we already know the answer. Because he loved us so much. I'll never forget the first time. I always said my children would never say things. Did you ever do that? My children will have the answers to those things. Well, I'll never have to ask the answer to that. They'll never ask what the answer is for that. Why am I here? I didn't ask to be born. Don't say that to your parents. That's trash. I mean, seriously. If you don't understand the answer to that, come talk to me, okay? Why was I born? I didn't ask to be born. I didn't either. Neither did anybody in here. But we have one that asked to be born. Jesus. From the foundation of the world was the Lamb that was to be slaughtered for the salvation of all of us. And I know I'm paraphrasing that, but to understand that concept, that Jesus chose the opportunity to come to earth so that we could ask the question, why? Why did he do that? And I think that over the next several weeks, we're going to be looking at answering the questions of why certain things are the way that they are. We're going to take a biblical view of these things, and I hope that you are praying about them. And there'll be some signs on the walls as we go through the weeks that we do this. And there's a list of the topics out in the foyer. And if you think that this is important for you, just ask. We have people who will, if you want to share this with someone else, we'll get you a DVD or a CD made of the lessons. I hope that if there's a need that you'll take advantage of that. But I believe that answering these questions in this forum will, with the format that I think I've chosen to do this with, that we as a family will be able to at least find out where we are and where we're headed. And that may even answer the question of why are we doing that. I'm just hoping that we can. Too many times I think we've allowed the world to dictate to us how we feel about church and what it is and what it should be. I remember as I was growing up that whenever, I always heard going to church, and then I became a child of God and we started attending worship and they said, well, you don't go to church, you are the church. And I think we've lost that over the years. I mean, our language is a living language. It changes. And the meaning of words change. So I have no problem with people saying, I'm going to church. Because the idea of church has changed, the definition of it. Now, when we understand what the idea of the word ecclesia means, it means the assembly, the coming together of God's chosen people when it's used in the context of coming to worship. I understand that. But somebody may ask, well, why is that way? Why church? They may ask a lot of other questions, and we're going to look at that. But we've allowed others outside of this fellowship to have the same ability to channel and work to shape and form us as a body of believers that we've allowed God to have. And that's not necessarily a good thing. We've allowed others outside to tell us how to build our buildings. We've let others outside tell us what we need to do as far as our order of worship goes. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It makes sense. Fits a pattern. It makes us comfortable. It gives us the opportunity to have a commonality between us. We go to a civic auditorium and it's shaped much like this. And however, the thing is that we build these great sepulchers of buildings, and sometimes that becomes the church, the thing that is sacred and held in highest esteem. And we do need to take care of and manage our building. Well, don't get me wrong, but this building is not holy. In fact, one of the church buildings that I actually preached in at one time and was a member of is now a dance hall. Oh, did somebody faint? We put stipulations on these buildings that aren't there. Why? Well, we're going to answer some of those questions. And there's some things that are valid, there's some things that are necessity, and some things are expedient, and some things are valid reasons why. But we're going to try to look at the biblical idea of these things. The autonomy of the church is clear in our New Testament. In the pattern that God has given us, the idea of each church being responsible for itself should be plain and clear to so many people, but to so many people it's not. And if you're visiting with us today, I want you to know that this congregation of believers that meets here has a set of elders, 6 men who have recently been appointed to lead this congregation. And we do not answer to anyone other than God in that leadership. That's it. We don't have a national headquarters. And people ask me all the time, why? And I believe it's because God has taught us that the autonomy of the church is clear. Look at Colossians 3:17. And whatever you do, whether in word or deed, do it all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to the Father through him. So whatever it is that we do, whether it be in what we say or how we worship or what we do, if we do it in the name of Jesus and to his glory, he's going to receive the glory of that. We're going to be blessed by that. But the important thing is to understand that we have to realize that this congregation is going to be governing itself according to the Scripture. That's what we plan to do. That's what God has called us to do. That's why we don't have a national headquarters. And that's one of the reasons why we need to understand the idea behind this statement here, that whatever we do, whether it's in word, what we do, or what we say or what we do, we have to do it all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks. But the autonomy of the church is clear. The elders have the responsibility to know the Scriptures, to lead the flock entrusted to them into the future, and always, folks, don't misunderstand this. They are to lead us through the Scriptures and toward God. Never away from God for any reason. It's toward God, to be with him. That's the responsibility that they have. The elders are ultimately responsible for what goes on at this building and what happens to this building and what happens to the facilities, but their main thing is what's happening in the pews, in the hearts of the people that are part of this church family. There is spiritual mindedness that we have to accept and understand. They're responsible for the souls of this congregation. That's the beauty of the autonomy of the church. They don't have to be worried about what's going on downtown or across town or across the road or wherever. They're here for us. They need to be aware of what's going on around them, but they need to be here for us. And we, as a family, need to understand. In 1 Corinthians chapter 1 and verse 10, we have to be followers of the leadership that is in the congregation and realize that we may not always agree in the areas of opinion. But we must understand the concept of what Paul states here in 1 Corinthians 1 and verse 10. I appeal to you, brothers and sisters, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, that all of you agree with one another in what you say, and that there be no divisions among you, but that you will be perfectly united in mind and in thought. We all ask the questions, why? We ask questions about God. However, some do because of their circumstances about their Christian walk of faith that they've started or are about to start. We ask the question, why? Questions, I think, help us give thought to the answers that we've been offered all of our lives to the why we do what we do dilemma. To put it simply, we just are in a quandary sometimes about why do we want to ask why, or why do they need to have the answers? We use questions to scrutinize our belief system and our own actions in our faith. I believe the reason we ask questions is because we love knowing the answers. We're an inquisitive race of people, or a species. We're the ones that have thought. We're the ones that have the ability to ask why. I mean, most of us don't like not being in the know because we don't have the answers. We want to be the ones with the answers. And sometimes when we don't have the answers, we'll make them up. I believe that's what you're referring to, wasn't it, Ryan? That's not the answer. So what do we do in the church? We look for the right answer. We look for what it says. And I hope that this study will help us to get through being uncomfortable asking the questions of why. Once we get to a certain age, we become uncomfortable. We don't want to ask why. We don't want to look, in our words, stupid. Stupid is as stupid does, according to what a young man said on a movie one time. Ignorance is bliss, I've heard. But to the Christian, it is the beginning of the cancer that kills the spirit. By not being humble enough to admit we don't know the answers. By realizing that, yeah, I wished I knew the answers, but I don't know, and so don't ask me, or we'll put it off on somebody else, or we'll make up something. We need to be people who are eager to answer those who have questions. I don't want us to accept anything less than the whole truth about who and whose we are as Christians. We should never accept anything less than the truth. I don't think that the standard answers we give are good enough unless we understand why. We may have the answers but not understand why. We may be able to quote Scripture and show people, but unless we have it in our hearts, we don't have the right answer. So we've got to find out what the whole truth is to the question that was asked. See, I know in my life that I've asked questions and have asked questions that have stretched my faith and my mind over the years. Whenever I became a Christian, before I became a Christian, I was studying. I went from different religions and asked because I just knew that there had to be more than just this one way that I kept hearing about. So I went over to one religious group and I asked them a question. I said, but why? And they said, but that's just the way we do it. But what about the Scripture? Why not? And they said, because that's just the way we do it. And from place to place I went until I realized that it's not the matter of how the answer comes out, it's where it comes from. I don't need it to come from man, I need it to come from God. So the question is, why ask why? Because God gives the answers. And we need to understand that. Jesus understood the importance of asking people questions, even concerning their faith. Christopher Roberts made this statement in a sermon back in 2003. Oops, I missed something. Yeah, here it is. In the Gospel of Luke, Jesus is recorded to have asked 89 questions. In Matthew, 85. In Mark, 47. When reading through the Gospels, you'll encounter one question after another. Many of these questions were questions in response to questions. Why ask why? Many times Jesus answered questions by asking questions, but there are times when he did not challenge those he was with by asking another question. Not only that, but he didn't explain the parables to his disciples either. Stephen Jones writes, Jesus shaped a questioning community where his closest disciples felt very comfortable asking him questions and receiving not answers, but his questions. Not only were they comfortable asking the question because apparently they got the answers that they were looking for, but they knew that the possibility was coming as that to answer their question, he would ask them another. Some of us do that to escape the question. Had a guy come up to me and said, why is the church not growing? And I said, I don't know why. It worked. He said, I'll get back to you. So we started to study, and it was great. I mean, it was a lot more than that, but you understand the basic premise. Why? Sometimes answering questions with why is okay, but spiritually, questions of why have a place in our faith. It's a mystery to many, as it should be, and a mystery of a gift once uncovered is extremely important. In Colossians chapter 2, verse 3 and 4, all the richest treasure of wisdom and knowledge are embedded in the mystery and nowhere else. And we've been showing the mystery. I'm telling you this because I don't want anyone leading you off on some wild goose chase after another so-called mystery or the secret. Now that's Colossians 2, verse 3 and 4 out of the Message. And I want you to know that that's exactly what it's trying to say to us. In whom are hidden all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. I tell you this so that no one may deceive you by fine-sounding arguments. Sometimes when we ask why, there's people who have answers that we take at face value because they sound good. Think about your situation. Have you accepted somebody's explanation for something just because it sounded close to right or had a lot of truth in it, but yet you weren't real sure about all of it? You just accepted because that's the way it was. That's the way I understood it whenever it came to being an entertaining group in church. You know, can't entertain in the church. What's entertainment? Well, we could go into a whole facet of different things there. But you know, the one thing that bothers me is that a lot of times what we do is we react to the situation and say, hey, we can't do that, and make it sound like a fine-sounding argument instead of sitting down with someone and explaining, because it's a whole lot easier to get them under our thumb. And sometimes that happens, and I understand that. It happens in families. Because I said so is one of my favorite statements to my children. Why, Daddy? Because I said so. You know, and every once in a while, that's the only answer they need. But folks, that's not the way it is when it comes to spirituality. God's given us the Word. The Word has the answers. And if it doesn't, we don't need to make them up. Now, we have elders, as I said at the beginning, and shepherds that lead us into those spiritual things that we need to understand. We have elders who are in place to share with us and lead us in those spiritual directions and make calls in those gray areas that sometimes we question. But we should never, ever have to worry about whether the Word of God is being compromised. We need the truth to be taught, and it must be taught, and that's their responsibility to make sure that it's taught. And folks, I want you to know something. I would rather die than preach something or teach something that isn't based in the Scripture. But when it comes to opinion, I have to say, I've got shepherds that make those decisions, that lead me in those areas. And if I have a question of why, that's when I need to go to them and ask. But we're going to try to look at some of those things. We've been asked difficult questions at times, the answers that aren't too easy to find, or for some aren't easy to find. They're not only not easy to find, but they're hard to accept. The answers that aren't too easy to find are hard necessarily sometimes to accept, but I think we need to be careful when someone offers us a really easy answer that seems to be canned, like I said, or without thought. There's only one place to find the answers to our questions, to really get down to the meat of the matter, and that's in the Scripture. And it's time we become people of the Scripture again. It's time we started studying the Scripture again. Not just reading it. Not just saying, well, I do that in Bible class, but letting it become a part of our lives. That our study is personal. It's deep. It's to be doing it for the understanding of God. And somebody says, well, why? And the answer to that is because He loved us that much. Let me ask you this. What would a dating or marriage relationship be if we stopped asking questions concerning our partners? I did something yesterday, and my wife looked at me and said, why'd you do that? She's been married to me 34 years. She ought to know the reason why I did that. But she still asked. Ask a lot of questions. Why? Okay? It's very important. And the reason for that is that's the only way you're going to get to know anybody. If you don't get to know the people that you're dating, you're going to wake up one morning and realize, hey, I made a mistake by not asking questions, by not getting to know them, by not sharing my life with them, my expectations, my wants. In fact, find out if they squeeze from the top of the tube or the bottom of the tube, okay? It makes a lot of difference. Actually, even which way the toilet paper goes on the toilet tissue holder. Now, see, we're all laughing because we've all been there. And these teenagers looking at us going, you're crazy. It matters. But I say that because the reasons why are a lifetime of being together. Why do you believe what you believe? Why do you care? Don't stop asking why. Because people that stop asking why start asking why not. And that's the scary question. Because that's the question the world wants us to answer. Why not give up? Why not throw it away? Why not just do something else? Why not do what you want to do or what feels right? God doesn't want us to do that. He's got us in a quandary sometimes, but it's because we put ourselves there. It's kind of like the man and the wife that were married for 60 years. Their children were out of the house, and one day they got down to where he ate sandwiches for lunch every day. And he loved his sandwiches. He liked sandwiches. He thought sandwiches were great. And his wife loved him so much that she would always make her sandwich with the heel. And she hated the heel, but out of her love for her husband, took the heel every time they'd have sandwiches. Every loaf of bread, she'd take the heel, and she'd eat that heel. For 60 years she did this. Finally, one day they got down to where she had not baked bread. She'd been ill for a couple of days, and so she had not baked her bread. And back in the old days, we used to bake our own bread and slice it up, just to let y'all know. They got down to, and she had 4 heels. And the husband walked in and said, "Where's the bread?" She goes, "Honey, I've been ill and I'm so sorry." He says, "What?" And she says, "All that's left are the heels, and I'm so sorry that there's not any regular bread." And he says, "You mean I finally get to eat a heel?" And she said, "Do what?" And he said, "You mean I finally get to eat a heel? That's been my favorite part of the loaf forever." She goes, "You're kidding me." He said, "No, I've always wanted to eat the heels, but I thought they were your favorite." She goes, "I hate heels." Ask questions. Folks, God's the same way. He loves us. And He doesn't mind us asking why if we're willing to really listen to the answer. We need to be seeking answers so that we may understand what it is that we're to be about as children of God. We need to be seeking answers. The most important questions are the ones that begin with why. I don't think we should ever be afraid to ask about anything that we do, why. If we start settling for answers that are not thought out or checked, I believe we'll stop growing. I believe that maybe what's wrong with the Lord's church today is that we started taking canned answers for why and not listening to God's word for why. We've had so much knowledge in the past that we've just taken it for granted. We've got all the answers without doing the study necessary with the people that are asking the questions. And in showing them through God's word, we have become the word of God, and that's a scary thought. When we ought to be opening it, we're quoting it instead of reading it and showing it. I believe with every ounce of my being that this is one of the church's biggest problems, is our inability to sit down and to visit with people. People ask why and challenge our answers. And we become defensive and upset because we have to give an answer for what we believe. And even sometimes to people who we think should already know, we have to give those answers to why. And it's frustrating to some. But you know, Peter wrote, we need to ask the question, why ask why? In 1 Peter 3 and verse 15, but in your hearts, revere Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. But do this with gentleness and respect. Stephen Jones made this last statement about why ask why. He says this, we will find that God is not only in the answers, but also in the questions. The reason is so that we will grow and mature. Why do we ask why? So that we can grow and mature. We'll grow and mature in what? in our faith, so that we may help those of our spiritual family who are young in the faith, and even those who are striving to grow into spiritual maturity. That's the reason we ask questions. That's the reason why we need to ask why. That's the reason why I want us as a family, over the next several weeks, to look at the answers to these things and do it, as I said, through a biblical perspective. Why ask why? I think you know the reason now. It's so that we can be closer to God as a family and as a group of believers. I don't know where you are this morning, but I do know this, that God knows your heart. And I know that He wants you to be what you're supposed to be. He wants to hear those questions, why? But He also wants you to know the answers to the questions, why? And they're going to come out of God's Word. This morning, it may be that you need to ask the question of yourself, why am I here? And I hope your answer is because I want to be closer to God. I want to be able to come and to learn more about Him and to share this great opportunity of being a child of the family of God, or in the family of God, a child of the Creator. I want to be where He is. Because where two or more are gathered in my name, He said, there am I. He's here this morning. He's looking at your heart. He's wanting to know your response. He's wanting to know why you're here. And He's looking and He's seeing. The question is what is He seeing in your heart? It may be that you need prayer. There's some cards in the pew in front of you. They're prayer cards, the yellow ones. You can take those out. If you need to ask for prayer for whatever reason, it may be that you're in a right relationship with God and you know somebody that needs to change. Write that down. Or you pray about it where you are. It may be that you need prayer. It may be that you need to become a child of God. We're here to receive you this morning. And as Chris leads us in this song of encouragement, I want you to think about where we are and what we're doing. And I want you to answer the question, why? If you need to come, while we stand and sing, won't you come?